Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Thank you. I'm Paul Grewal, the Chief Legal Officer at Coinbase. More importantly, I am joined this morning by the Secretary of the Department of Labor. We are just so lucky and thrilled to be joined by the Honorable Lori Chavez DeRemer. Just a bit of background for those of you less familiar with her illustrious history in public service. The Secretary has rather humble roots in her public service, beginning as a Parks Commissioner, working your way all the way up to Mayor, a member of Congress, serving on the very influential and important Ag Committee before taking her current office, responsible for the health, growth, and ultimate prosperity of America's labor force. So, Madam Secretary, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I was really excited when I received the invitation to be here in front of this group because I think it's an exciting time under this administration. So thank you again for having me.
It's our pleasure. Why don't we get to it?
Okay.
I want to start by something of great interest to many in this room and all around the country, which was your recent action taken to rescind guidance at the Department of Labor that really discouraged companies and other organizations from including crypto offerings in their 401k plans. And I would love to just, first of all, say thank you for that. I think many here appreciate what that meant.
Thank you. It's a good decision. Good decision.
Well, could you take us into a bit of your thinking behind that decision and sort of what led you to take this important action?
No, thank you very much for saying that. And you kind of mentioned my background. Oftentimes I have said, whether it's local government, federal government, or even at the executive branch, anything that we do that's adversarial to the American worker, American business is probably not good policy. So my goal when I became the secretary was to take a hard look and analyze all of the rules and regulations that not only have happened throughout the Department of Labor's history, but really in this last administration. So we wanted to take a look at the Biden administration's regulations, make sure that they were in line with the administration's goals and policies, and this was one that really stood out and said, this is not freedom, this is not how we're going to do business. So to rescind that regulation, I think, was key. The federal government and this administration understands that this should be up to the fiduciaries in relationships with their investors and the retirees to do so, and that seemed like an easy fix. So we were glad to do it, and as we move forward with looking at other regulations in general, and for all sectors of the economy, we'll take a hard look at understanding, does this work for the American worker and for the American people? And if it doesn't, we shouldn't be putting our thumb on the scale.
No thumbs on the scale. I think that is music to many of our ears.
For sure.
Certainly for those of us who suffered a very different standard over the last 4 years. Is it fair to expect, Madam Secretary, that we're going to see these same principles focused on freedom and fairness apply to other rules, other regulations that may have been holding workers back?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was kind of alluding to. As we continue down this road and understanding when policies and regulations and rules are made, they really do affect so many in every sector. My job and my responsibility, one, to the administration and to the American people, is to understand what they're going through, how they deal with it every single day, and can they have certainty when we're making these types of decisions that really allow for innovation and technology to advance. And what we're seeing in the marketplace today is the advancement of all of these types of different technologies, whether it's in cryptocurrency, whether it's in AI. The president has leaned in, and so we'll take a hard look at all rules and regulations, despite the sector, and make sure that we are working for the American people.
One of the most destructive effects of the approach of the previous 4 years was to send a lot of jobs in crypto that were born here in the United States overseas to other markets. People were literally taking their talents along with their laptops and their capital to other parts of the world. Can you talk a bit about your perspective on how reasonable, sensible crypto rules here in the United States can help bring some of those jobs back?
Well, we want to level the playing field. I think we've heard over and over again, really in the Trump 1 administration, but certainly in this really last few months, he has leaned in to say he wants American dominance. You can't have American dominance if we're sending our workforce and our industries overseas. We needed to bring those industries back, and the president, tens of trillions of dollars reinvested into the United States of America, is going to bring the workforce back right here on American soil, and that's how we're going to be dominant. And so with cryptocurrency, with crypto, with all of the new advances in the high-end technology, we're going to need that workforce right here on the ground. And so as part of the equation for myself as the labor secretary is to make sure that we're assisting those companies as they onshore. Will they have the skilled workforce and the skilled training ready to go on day one? And I think that's often a concern in the labor market. I've been a business owner for 20 years with my husband, and you do need to have a guarantee that you have the workforce ready to go, or you can't scale it. And we need to make sure that we can scale it right back here in the United States.
I appreciate you're also highlighting the fact that you're a Secretary of Labor who's also had to manage a payroll.
That's right. I think I have to check on this, but I've been told, I believe I'm the 30th Labor Secretary, but the only one who's been just a regular business owner and not a labor attorney. So, bringing that common sense approach to back into the executive branch, I think is helpful for just everyday average Americans who are trying to understand what's the next step. And so when I think of the lens that I make decisions on, it's, I was a mayor, I'm a business owner, I'm a former member of Congress, I've been on both sides of the dais, and now I work for the President of the United States to be on the road and understand what does the American workforce need.
It's so important. You mentioned, obviously, in addition to reshoring or onshoring American jobs that may have been lost over the last several years, it's critically important that we focus on developing skills and talents here at home and developing that workforce to grow the number of jobs in our industry as well as many others. Can you share with the audience a little bit about your thinking around workforce development?
Well, again, market demands is where I like to lead from. What does the market need? What are you all asking for? What does every industry need? And now they need it quicker, faster, and on time, and not spending a ton of money while they're educating the workforce that they need. One of the executive orders by the President of the United States, of course, is to have 1 million apprentices, active apprentices. We sit anywhere around 680, 700,000 now. What I am doing is focus on expanding that apprenticeship program, registered apprentices with the Department of Labor. For instance, an example that has never happened before, that's often been in the skilled trades, primarily the construction trades, but it's not really been in private industry where they want to register their apprentices. But the president has asked 1 million. We also need them skilled in AI. We need them to understand what the jobs are of today, modernization of that. So I'm working hard. I'm traveling across the country on my 50-state America at Work tour to understand exactly the type of skilled training that everybody needs in every sector, and then do my best to lean in and fulfill those executive orders for the president. We're going to need that. We're seeing 2-year degrees, 4-year degrees. Traditionally, we've often seen the 4-year degrees over the last 20 years. People want to work while they earn while they learn, and they need that upskilling and reskilling for today's modern workforce. And so that's where our focus is going to be.
I think it's an incredibly important focus. In crypto and in industries like it, we sometimes tend to overlook the importance of skilled trades and community college and developing workforce skills. Whether it's mining operations, it could be any number of different elements of our industry. Those are important elements, aren't they?
Absolutely. Innovation is where we've often, at least from the government's perspective, I will always say 100% of the time the private industry does it better than the public. But if we can partner public and private industry together, and we can work with our education, community colleges, career and technical education, we're often seeing now on those campuses where private sector companies are building centers of excellence right there, and they're working together collaboratively. I would not know that unless one, being, again, a former mayor, has helped to understand what's on the ground is the only thing that matters in a community. But I need to go out and be on the road, and that's why events like today and working with different industries, I can understand exactly what you all need and then, put that in play. And I can't do that if I think that I know better sitting in Washington, D.C. That doesn't make any sense to me. So I'm out there, I'm trying to understand exactly what you all need, and then assisting you in having that workforce ready to go so that, the bottom line matters. Time is money, and everybody wants a skilled worker yesterday, and we have to make sure that we have those workers available.
We sure do. You shared with me that your time as a mayor really sort of shaped and influenced how you think about making good policy. I wonder if you might share with the audience, what lessons, if any, you learned from that experience that are directly applicable to the work you're doing now.
Sure. Well, everybody knows where a mayor is all the time. It doesn't matter if you're getting up in the morning, taking your kids to school, if you're out on the street, you're going to the grocery store, they will find you, they will talk to you about everything that matters, because that's where people invest their time and money for their future. And they get up in the morning, they want to know that they can get out the door safely, get on some safe roads, get to work, get home by the end of the day, take their kids to the park, lock their doors, and know that there's not going to be any issues. That's really just the basic premise of understanding when we make decisions at a local level. I've taken that when I was in Congress. I used to call myself the mayor of Oregon's 5th District because I wanted people to know that I was always available and accessible. I would give out my cell number to everybody. As a Secretary of Labor, I do the exact same thing. I expect people to understand that they have access to understanding what we do every single day and how it affects you. When I'm making a decision on a rule or a regulation, and I'm working with Congress on a policy, and then the president ultimately will sign something, I need to know that that's exactly what was meant to be. And I kind of mentioned to you previous, the freedom that the president is giving his secretaries in giving us the latitude to move about the cabin. I say that, when you hear that on an airplane where it says, you're free to now move about the cabin, that's how I feel about this administration. The secretaries have been deployed across the United States together for a reason, and that's to understand what the American people want. Come back and report to the president, and let's get the job done. And we understand that. But you wouldn't know that unless you're in local government and really pay attention to what matters most to people. And that's usually their families, and at the end of the day, that they can provide for them and have that freedom to do so. That's what you all are doing here every single day. And that's why decisions at the Department of Labor that just assisted in that will allow you that certainty to continue down a road where ultimately it will feed into national security, United States dominance. And if you know the President of the United States at all, he doesn't do anything lightly. He wants to lean into this so that we are winning not only in the crypto space, but the AI space, that the United States is leading the way.
You have had a unique vantage point on the working style of this president. I wonder if you could just share with many of us who have not had that opportunity, what it's like to see President Trump working day to day on American competitiveness, innovation. How does work style affect the substance of the policy?
Well, I certainly hope that you all recognize that he works nonstop. I think 20 to 22 hours a day. I don't know how he has the energy to do it, but that culture that he has asked the secretaries and the cabinet to do is exactly the same. And now that culture has been implemented into most of our agencies, where we are on the clock 24/7. I think the president certainly understands that we're in a period of time in this country that the window is very small to capitalize, because if the United States isn't doing it, other countries will do that. And he understands that, and you can see it through his trade talks. You can see it when he's negotiating. You can see it when he comes back. I was with him in Pittsburgh, for instance, for an example, talking to the United Steelworkers, and understanding that if there's an investment there of $14 billion by a company in Japan, Nippon Steel, who merged with US Steel, and then another $14 billion, to see the people on the streets of that small community line when we were there, to understand that this is an investment in their home. So his work style always leads, at least from the Department of Labor's perspective, from the American worker perspective. And then he asks us to do the hard work in order to implement that so they can feel it at home in a quick level. But internally, when we're in our cabinet meetings, we have cabinet meetings every 2 weeks or so. We have another one this Friday. That won't be a secret, because the news media will be invited in for transparency. That is something the president also wants the American people to understand, is that he's being as transparent as you all expect him to be and voted for him to be that way. And again, then we can be real with the American people. So he's quite funny. I love to be around him because he's energetic. And when he says he's going to do something, he does it. And that makes my job easy, that I can then go into my agency and say, this is what we're doing. This is how we're staying focused. And we're always going to lead with the American worker from the Department of Labor's perspective first.
In addition to so much changing in the dynamic of the competition between the United States and so many countries around the world, there are important changes happening in the nature of the work that the American worker is doing. I'm curious, at the Department of Labor, how are you all thinking about the changing nature of work that people do and what technologies they're going to require in order to be competitive?
Well, I think the first and foremost thing to say about that is getting out of the way of the innovation that we're seeing on the ground. There are so many young minds that are ready to go spot on. They're native to being on the phone. They're native to AI. They're native to all of things happening very quickly. And so I see that in this sector. We expect money to move around. We want the flexibility and the modernization to do what we need to do in order to protect our own wealth and our own families. And so the Department of Labor's perspective, again, not put the thumb on the scale, but make sure that we are enforcing the laws and that the laws that are on the books make sense to the modernization of today's workforce in 2025. Very different than, even 20 years ago, 10 years ago. The trajectory is quite fast that we're seeing, and so being ahead of that is going to be key. And we've seen the president on this issue, cryptocurrency, also lean in. What happens in the future about where he sees that being, we know that he's on board, and so we're going to assist him in advancing the needs of this country so we can be first in this race.
I alluded earlier to your public service. You mentioned, of course, your equally proud service as a small business owner. You're now the Secretary of Labor. From that unique vantage point, sitting in the middle of all of that, how do you see technologies like crypto, digital assets, blockchains impacting not just the financial industry, not just big business, but small business?
Well, it's again, the little guys never feel like they have the level playing field as the big guys because maybe they don't have the resources or the support staff or how to manage it or navigate or even mitigate some of the issues that come about. That's the assistance I think the Department of Labor can get clear guidance on what the policies are. We like compliance at the Department of Labor. We do not like to be penal in our serving up to follow the law. Now, obviously, we follow the law, and if there is any nefarious behavior and somebody wants to double down and know that they're breaking the law, well, we have enforcement capabilities there. But the goal oftentimes is people don't even understand what the laws are. They don't know how to navigate it. They want to see compliance, and we're going to work through education, through opinion letters. My deputy secretary, Keith Sonderling, who worked in Trump administration under the Wage and Hour Division, he understands it very well. I think he's currently talking about innovation and AI and all these across the world. I mean, the United States is on the cusp of being the leader, as always they have been, on the entire globe. And this is just one more sector that we also want to do that in. But we have to have that flexibility for small businesses to be able to, whether it's the employee, to be able to invest. They should have access to the same thing as everybody else. And again, that rule, working with your fiduciaries on being able to invest in cryptocurrency in your 401k should be made between anybody who has that 401k should be able to do that with their fiduciary and understand what they're getting into. But that's the freedom that the president is asking for.
Now, before you have to scoot back to Washington, I know you have a very packed day ahead of you there in addition to your work here in New York today. I want to ask you one last question. Is there one thing about your priorities as the Secretary of Labor or the work of the Department of Labor in the years that lie ahead that you'd like to just underscore or highlight for this audience and everybody watching all over the country and around the world?
Well, I think, again, I'm going to reiterate it. I kind of just said it, but I think you will always look to me, I would imagine, for that certainty and understanding what regulations are going to mean to the industry. And you're going to look for that guidance throughout. And you're going to ask, and oftentimes you see guidance and rules and rulemaking take so long. And how can you possibly plan for an industry and or a business? Even on a 5-year strategic plan is sometimes difficult. And when we give you lead time, at least from the government's perspective, sometimes a 30-day or a 60-day turnaround doesn't make for good business and it doesn't make for good planning. So my goal is to always be transparent. It's always to give you clear guidance. And that's for all industries in general. And then again, to reiterate this administration's I would say number one goals are to be leading in all of these higher new technology and modernization of the workforce, and then giving him that workforce that he needs to do the job and deliver to the American people to grow it and be dominant here right at home. The secretaries are all on board. Again, we have our next cabinet meeting tomorrow, and you'll hear about this one big, beautiful bill that we are working with our colleagues in Congress to do, and I would imagine that that will also give some framework to not only this industry, but to many others.
Well, good luck to you in your
you.
cabinet meeting tomorrow. Good luck to you in all your work at the Department of Labor. Ladies and gentlemen, the 30th Secretary of the Department of Labor, Lori Chavez DeRemer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks.